I've been unhappy for years, Nathan began, smiling faintly as he stood before our gathered friends and family. I want a divorce. The clinking of his champagne glass still echoed in the air as his words landed like a grenade in the middle of our 25th anniversary celebration. Our adult children, Ryan and Lauren, stared with their mouths agape. Friends froze mid-sip, eyes darting between us. The restaurant's private dining room, which I had decorated with silver anniversary balloons and framed photos of our decades together, suddenly felt airless. I simply nodded and replied, "I understand completely." Something flickered across Nathan's face, surprise, perhaps disappointment at my composure. He'd expected tears, begging, or a public meltdown. Instead, I turned to each stunned guest and thanked them warmly for coming to what had become our final celebration as a couple. My name is Claudia Bennett. I'm 57 years old, and after spending a quarter-century devoted to my marriage, raising our children, managing our household in Alexandria, Virginia, and supporting Nathan through 3 career changes, 2 financial disasters, and 1 major health scare, I found myself standing in an upscale restaurant, watching my husband try to blindside me with our divorce. As the party awkwardly dispersed, guests murmuring sympathies and shooting daggers at Nathan, I approached him with the calm of someone who had made peace with a hurricane long before it hit shore. "You'll want to call them first thing in the morning," I said, slipping a single business card into his hand. His eyes widened as he read the name on the embossed card, Miranda Shaw, Esquire, one of the most feared divorce attorneys in Virginia. "Why would you have this?" he asked, his voice suddenly less certain. I simply smiled, patted his arm, and walked away to hug our bewildered children. Over their shoulders, I watched Nathan's confident expression crumble as the first inkling that something was wrong pierced his self-assurance. What he didn't know, what I'd made absolutely certain he didn't know, was that 6 months earlier, while looking for our property tax statement in his desk drawer, I had discovered a lease agreement for an apartment in Old Town, our city's most expensive district. 2 days later, I glimpsed a series of disturbingly intimate texts between him and someone labeled Work Project when his phone lit up during dinner. And that was just the beginning of what I knew. By the time Nathan dropped his divorce bombshell at our anniversary party, I had spent half a year methodically documenting every aspect of his betrayal. He thought he was ending our marriage on his terms, but I had been preparing my exit strategy with military precision since Valentine's Day. Growing up, my grandmother always told me, "Trust, but verify." It was advice I had ignored throughout my marriage. I believed in Nathan completely. We met when I was 30, and he was 32, both working at Summit Financial, me in HR, him in sales. Our courtship was a whirlwind, and within a year, we were married with a prenuptial agreement that protected us both if things ever went south. 2 beautiful children followed, and I eventually stepped back from my career to focus on our family. While Nathan's career soared, moving from Summit to Crestline Industries, and then to Monarch Automotive, climbing the corporate ladder with each jump, I supported every decision, every late night, every weekend business trip. Even as our children grew up and needed their father at soccer games and dance recitals that he inevitably missed. "Your dad is working hard for all of us," I would tell them, believing it myself. And he did provide well. Our historic townhouse in Old Town, private schools for the kids, and comfortable family vacations twice a year. But looking back, I can see the signs I missed. The gradual emotional distance, the growing criticism of my appearance compared to the dynamic professionals he worked with, the diminishing physical intimacy explained away by stress and aging. Marriage changes after 20 years, my friends would assure me. It's normal to become more like roommates. What wasn't normal were the business dinners that left his collar smelling of perfume I didn't wear, or the second phone I found in his briefcase when packing for his appendectomy 3 years ago, a phone he claimed was just for international clients, and that mysteriously disappeared after his recovery. I convinced myself these were misunderstandings. The alternative was too painful to consider until Valentine's Day this year. Nathan had forgotten the holiday entirely, not unusual in recent years, but claimed a last-minute client emergency when I mentioned our dinner reservation. I spent the evening alone, flipping through old photo albums and wondering how we had drifted so far from the couple in those pictures. The next morning, I decided to file our tax paperwork early and needed our property records. That's when I found it, tucked between insurance documents and car titles. A lease agreement for an apartment on King Street, signed 2 months earlier. Nathan's signature, clear as day, on a 1-bedroom unit that cost nearly a third of his monthly take-home pay. That discovery changed everything. I sat in my car outside the apartment building for 3 hours, paralyzed between confronting him immediately and pretending I never saw the lease. The sleek, modern building mocked everything I thought I knew about our financial situation. "We need to be more careful with spending this year," Nathan had told me just weeks before. "The market's unstable." Yet he had somehow found money for a $3,800 monthly rental in the city's most desirable neighborhood. Money that was supposedly too tight for the kitchen renovation I'd been requesting for 5 years. When I finally drove home, I made 2 decisions that would alter the trajectory of my life. I would not confront Nathan until I understood exactly what I was facing, and I would protect myself by gathering every shred of evidence possible before making any moves. The next morning, while Nathan was at the gym, I examined his phone. He thought himself clever using a fingerprint lock, but I had long ago noticed he used his right thumb to unlock it. While he slept, I carefully pressed his thumb to the sensor and found messages that confirmed my worst fears. He and his coworker, Alicia Dawson, had been involved for at least 18 months. Their texts were explicit, filled with references to our place and plans for a future together once he handled things at home. Reading their exchanges, I learned Alicia was 34, recently divorced, and worked in marketing at Monarch Automotive. She had convinced Nathan that their May-December romance was his ticket to renewed youth and excitement. My hands shook as I photographed key conversations, making sure to capture timestamps and contact information. The pain of betrayal was overwhelming, a vice grip around my chest that made breathing difficult. 25 years of memories twisted by the knowledge that our recent history had been built on lies. That evening, as Nathan kissed my cheek absently before diving into work emails, I struggled to maintain my composure. The urge to scream, to demand answers, was nearly overwhelming. Instead, I smiled and brought him his favorite evening scotch. "Working late again?" I asked casually. "Quarterly reports," he replied without looking up. "Don't wait up." I nodded, retreating to our bedroom where I allowed myself 10 minutes of silent tears before calling my oldest friend, Diane. "I need the name of the best divorce attorney in Alexandria," I said when she answered, "and I need absolute discretion." 2 days later, I sat across from Miranda Shaw in her downtown office, laying out what little evidence I had gathered so far. The distinguished attorney, silver-streaked Bob, piercing gaze, listened without interruption before saying words that would become my mantra. We won't just build a case, Claudia. We'll build an ironclad fortress. But first, we need to understand exactly what we're up against. Miranda's advice was clear. Become an intelligence operative in my own marriage. Document everything. Follow the money. Build a complete picture of our assets before Nathan knew I was onto him. The moment he realizes you're aware, he'll start hiding assets and constructing his own narrative, she warned. So began my double life. On the surface, I remained the dutiful wife, hosting dinners, attending company events, planning our anniversary celebration. Beneath that facade, I became a methodical investigator, documenting every aspect of our financial and personal lives. I started with our finances. Nathan had always handled investments while I managed household accounts. Now I needed the full picture. I told him I wanted to learn more about investing for my own knowledge, a request he dismissed with patronizing amusement, but ultimately granted by sharing our financial advisor's contact information. Just don't make any changes without consulting me, he cautioned. These things are complicated. Our financial advisor, Gregory Lowe, was initially reluctant to discuss details, until I reminded him that, as Nathan's spouse, I had a legal right to information about our joint assets. Once convinced, Gregory became surprisingly forthcoming, especially after I mentioned concerns about unusual money movements. Well, there have been significant withdrawals over the past year and a half, he admitted. I assumed Nathan discussed these with you. He hadn't. The withdrawals totaled $275,000. Money transferred from our joint investment accounts to an entity I'd never heard of, Bennett Consulting LLC. Nathan established it as a side business, Gregory explained, for consulting work separate from his main employment. A shell company, as Miranda later confirmed, likely created to funnel marital assets away from our shared portfolio. I photographed every document Gregory shared, noting dates, amounts, and account numbers. My next step was accessing Nathan's email. He wasn't tech-savvy and used the same password for most accounts, variations of our children's birthdays. The irony wasn't lost on me as I typed Ryan0923 into his login. What I found confirmed my suspicions and revealed new betrayals. Emails with a realtor about buying a condo in Raleigh, North Carolina. An offer letter from Torrent Media, based in Raleigh, dated 3 months earlier. Flight confirmations for golf weekends that were actually trips with Alicia. Messages to Alicia discussing their future plans. Once the anniversary party is behind us, I'll handle the divorce quickly. Claudia will be devastated, but she'll get over it. The timing works perfectly with the Raleigh move. They had it all planned. He would announce our divorce at the anniversary party, positioning himself as the honest husband who had simply fallen out of love, but waited for our milestone before moving on. Then he would relocate to Raleigh with Alicia, taking his new position at Torrent and living in the condo they had already picked out. I sat at his desk, reading their calculated plans for dismantling my life, and felt something inside me harden. This wasn't just an affair. This was a comprehensive campaign to discard me with minimal financial consequence. After I had devoted my entire adult life to supporting his success. That night, I made a silent promise. Nathan Bennett would not know what hit him. With Miranda's guidance, I expanded my investigation. Our prenuptial agreement had been straightforward. Assets brought into the marriage remained separate. Marital assets would be divided equally. but there was a critical infidelity clause Miranda highlighted. If either party engages in extramarital affairs, they forfeit certain protections. Most importantly, the injured spouse is entitled to a larger percentage of assets acquired during the years of infidelity. The key? Proving when the affair began. If I could establish that Nathan's relationship with Alicia extended over years, not months, I could claim far more than half our marital property, including portions of his retirement accounts and stock options. I hired Ethan Cole, a PI who specialized in infidelity cases. His services weren't cheap, but I used my personal savings. Money from freelance HR consulting that Nathan knew nothing about. Ethan confirmed that Nathan and Alicia's relationship went back at least 2 years. He provided photos of them together at the apartment, proof of their Raleigh weekend trips, statements from Monarch employees who knew about their relationship as early as spring 2023. Most damning? A former executive assistant, fired abruptly after complaining about their behavior, kept a work diary documenting locked-door meetings between them. She was more than happy to testify. 3 weeks before our anniversary, I made a crucial discovery. While backing up family photos to our cloud storage, I stumbled upon a hidden folder, Nathan's mistake. Inside, explicit photos of him and Alicia in the apartment, dated consistently over the past 2 years. I immediately sent them to Miranda and Ethan. "This is irrefutable proof of the timeline," Miranda said. The celebration was my masterpiece of deception. I chose the Carlisle Club, arranged a string quartet, and designed an evening celebrating a lifetime of love. Nathan grew increasingly agitated as guests arrived, each congratulating us on our milestone. Our children gave heartfelt toasts about growing up watching their parents' unwavering commitment. "You've shown us what real love looks like," Lauren said, raising her glass while Nathan shifted uncomfortably beside me. Throughout dinner, I noticed him checking his watch, his face growing more resolved. He was following the timeline he'd discussed with Alicia. Make the announcement after dinner, but before dessert. Let everyone see you're the reasonable one. When he finally stood and clinked his glass, a hush fell over the room. I watched his practiced smile, the rehearsed casualness, and thought about how many times he had imagined this moment, his declaration of freedom, his new beginning at my expense. "I've been unhappy for years," he began, voice steady. "I want a divorce." The collective gasp was audible. Lauren dropped her champagne glass. Ryan half rose from his chair, and I simply nodded and said, "I understand completely." The confusion on his face was worth every second of the past 6 months. He had expected tears, begging, a scene. Instead, he got calm acceptance, and the first flicker of fear that he wasn't in control. By 9 a.m. the next morning, Nathan's lawyer called with a generous settlement offer, 60-40 in my favor, plus the house. "Should I tell him we're just getting started?" Miranda asked. "Absolutely." By noon, 3 things happened. Divorce papers were served at Nathan's office during a board meeting. Monarch HR called him in for a discussion about inappropriate workplace conduct. Alicia cleaned out her desk and left in tears. The settlement negotiations were brief, facing professional ruin, tax investigations, and the collapse of his narrative. Nathan accepted terms far beyond what Miranda had thought possible. 85% of marital assets, including the house, retirement accounts, investments. Alimony for 10 years. A strict NDA preventing him from ever discussing our divorce publicly. In exchange, I agreed not to escalate matters with Monarch's board. though I made no promises about what anonymous tips might reach them. 1 month later, Nathan moved to Raleigh, alone, significantly poorer, and professionally diminished. Alicia, it turned out, lost interest once his financial prospects dwindled. The condo they had picked was now beyond his means, and Torrent Media rescinded their offer after learning why he left Monarch. As for me, I began the next chapter of my life on my own terms, with security, dignity, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing that when tested, I had risen to the challenge with strength I didn't know I had. And as I settled into my reclaimed life, I reflected on the irony. In trying to discard me, Nathan had freed me to become more fully myself than I had been in 25 years of marriage.